I went out to dinner with somebody last week, and I was having a discussion with them about the way the criminal justice system is not actually for victims, and that it's not set up for victims of crime. And I know that sounds like that doesn't really make any sense, because we think that the point of our criminal justice system is that we get justice for the crimes committed against victims of crime. I'm a psychologist, and I have been working in the criminal justice system for 14 years this year. I started my career in the criminal justice system. I've always worked with victims, and I have worked in all different forms of crime, generally though interpersonal and serious crimes, so homicide, manslaughter, domestic violence, sexual violence, neglect, child sexual exploitation, human trafficking, and child abuse, and those kinds of crimes. As the years have gone on, it has become blatant to me that this system has no interest in the well-being of the victim at all. I think for me, the biggest red flag of that, especially in terms of being informed, being supported, being protected in the justice system as a victim, is the fact that the prosecution is not representing you. You don't have a lawyer in the UK. So let's just talk about the UK for a moment. As a victim of crime, if you go to the police and you report a crime, and even if it ever does see a courtroom, which is incredibly rare because our statistics are absolutely terrible, when you are in that courtroom, the CPS and the police, they're not working on your behalf. The police are told to stay impartial, and that they're supposed to pursue any line of inquiry, whether that is for the victim or against. They're not on your side in any way. The police also aren't on the perpetrator's side, of course. However, even at the point of interview, even at the point where that perpetrator is either brought in for voluntary interview or is arrested and brought in for interview, they are able to seek legal advice. If they can't afford legal advice, because if they are very rich, they could go out and get the best criminal barrister they can find, and they could get, solicitors and people that can give them legal advice very quickly in order to protect them. Even if a perpetrator or a alleged suspect doesn't have that resource, they are actually given a solicitor by the state. They're given somebody that can come and give them legal advice, tell them what to answer, what not to answer, and also to protect them from, unethical questioning and illegal practices by the police, okay? So right from the beginning, the perpetrator has more rights than you as a victim and has more support than you as a victim. When you are brought in contrast, if you go to a video interview or if you're given a written statement, you have nobody giving you legal advice. You don't have somebody sat next to you sort of saying, well, you don't have to answer that question, or that's completely irrelevant. You don't have somebody sat with you in that interview room saying to the police like that they're not going to answer that question, that's not relevant, that line of questioning is unethical, that's why are you asking my client this. So as a victim, you're very likely to sit there and say all sorts of things that could be used against you further down the process, whereas a perpetrator could have somebody with them who's just given them private legal advice and has sort of said to them, look, they've got no evidence, they've got nothing on you, just give a no comment interview. Just say no comment, no comment, no comment. They've got nothing on you, they'll have to release you. A victim isn't afforded that same level of support. Now, if we go and look at the courtroom and we get into trial point of view here, in that courtroom, the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, they're not prosecuting on your behalf. They're not there for you, they're there for the Crown. They're prosecuting on behalf of the Crown and the country. It's not for you. So as a victim, you are there, as the person who has had a crime committed against you. You don't have a lawyer. You don't have somebody who is there for you, specifically for you. I know that the CPS would suggest that that is their role. And if they decide it's in the public interest, and if they decide that they are going to go ahead with that, then of course we have excellent barristers that are going to, push for justice, okay? But ultimately, do you have the right to go out and get the best barrister money can buy? Absolutely not. No, you do not. Can you pick your CPS barrister? No, you cannot. Can you pick the person in the CPS building your case based on their skill and based on their rank? No, you can't. You don't have any control over that situation. They will very often make that decision behind closed doors. You will not be able to ever speak to them about it. And then it will be a police officer that comes and tells you, yes, we've decided to charge, or no, they've decided not to charge. It's not the police that are making that decision. So there's a lot of hate towards the police about they didn't take it forward, they didn't charge. They don't make the decision. The CPS make that decision behind closed doors. It's not for the police are waiting on that email. They're waiting on that phone call to come and tell you about it. By contrast, again, what you have is a perpetrator or a suspect in that trial where they have got a choice and the ability to have paid significant amounts of money to get the best criminal barrister, a defence barrister, to protect them and to put their case forward that they either never did the crime, that it was different, or that circumstances aren't correct, or that it wasn't as bad as it seems, or whatever argument they're going to go down. And so you're instantly at a disadvantage as a victim. You've not got that same power that the perpetrator has. Similarly, when I was working in the criminal justice system, genuinely, I would work with victims and witnesses in our service, and they would be sat waiting to go in on the morning of a trial, and they haven't seen their statement in 2 years. Nobody's prepped them for the trial. They're sat there shaking, scared. You know, we're trying to support them. And then half an hour before a trial begins, CPS will walk in and say, like, hey, you know, my name's Jess, I'm CPS, this is my job, this is what I'm going to do today. They have never met that person. And I'm sorry, some people aren't going to like what I'm about to say, but I was co-located with CPS for years, and I actually worked in their office. My office was my desk was next to their desk, and I cannot tell you the amount of agency staff CPS were using around that time, where they would walk into my office, they would look at the bundle that was piled up on the desk on the table, and they would just look at me and be like, is this going ahead today? And I'd be like, yes. Have the victims and the witnesses turned up? Yes, they've been in there for like an hour. Oh, what is it anyway? What's this case? I don't know. So then they would like go through the bundle and they'd be like, oh, is it DV? DV, yeah. I don't usually do DV cases, to be honest, I do fraud, right? The lack of effort and preparation that has gone into that prosecution versus the perpetrator who's sat out there chatting with their defence barristers and prepping how they're going to defend them, where they've met them multiple times before that trial. That victim does not have a fair process. The perpetrator is getting a better process than the victim is. So the victim is then, you know, sat there, CPS is introducing themselves, and then they might be told, here's your original statement. Can you look through it? Can you read through it before the trial starts? Familiarise yourself with the statement. If you've got any questions, let me know. Well, the amount of times I've sat there, you know, and victims will be looking at it going, I don't remember saying that. I don't remember any of this. That's not what I said. That's not right. And, you know, I know that there has been improvements made because I work with police day in, day out. And I know that, you know, you're supposed to read through your statement and sign it and say that it's accurate and so on and so on. I get that. But the reality is it's taking 2 years for these trials to get to court. So, but 2 years after you've given a statement when you were traumatised and when you were in crisis and when you were probably crying and upset, for you to be sat somewhere in a little room going, here you go, here's your original statement. Do you remember saying all that? And thinking, fucking no, I don't remember any of this. And then having to be cross-examined on that by a defence team who have just spent months prepping for their case. This isn't fair. This is not a fair process. This isn't right. And so for me, this is just one element of that disparity, because the criminal justice system has all sorts of problems, but that disparity between the rights and the protection and the support between the victim and the suspect, that has to be balanced out for any of this to ever work.